Welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast, where we sit down and have real conversations with business leaders that have been where you are. During these interviews, we'll dive into what it takes to improve systems and champion processes that maximize performance. Each week, our trailblazing guests share their experiences and understanding of the workforce to help inspire change, challenge our thinking, and share what it takes to successfully travel the road to profitability. Now here's our host, co-founder and chief evangelist of About Time and WorkMax, Mike Merrill.
Hello and welcome back to the Mobile Workforce Podcast. I am your host, Mike Merrill, and today we are sitting down with Jason Radisson, the CEO at Mobo, the AI-powered all-in-one HR platform. So today, Jason and I are going to discuss the power of automation for workforce management and how AI can help reach new levels of productivity, and also how it can automate parts of the hiring process so that you can expedite new hires out onto your job site. So thank you, Jason, for joining us today. We are looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, excited to be here. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome, you bet. So let's just start off the top here and talk about, from your perspective, what is workforce management and how are companies automating that today?
Yeah, workforce management is broadly speaking, I think the new definition of workforce management is being in contact with your workforce out in the field all the time in real time, and being able to move people around for better efficiency, communicate with them around any tasks that are unclear. Even some of the things we're getting into is smart task management, where you can kind of revise duties on the fly depending on what's happening on the job site.
Awesome. So when companies hear that term, or they're thinking about automation as it relates to this, what is some of the low-hanging fruit that you think that they can really leverage through better automation?
Yeah, great question. There's a ton on the workforce management side. Definitely more efficient task delegation and making sure that the right task lands with the right person at the right time when they've got some capacity to work on it. I think another big one is just scheduling efficiencies. We all are trying to make do with less. I mean, we are in an economy where less people are entering the workforce, more people are retiring than ever before. And it's likely to continue for the next 10 plus years. So we're all trying to make do with more. And that's where, having really efficient scheduling and roster optimization happening in the background really helps a company.
Yeah, I know just generally in business, when we have solid and consistent structure and people can count on specific details and really know what to expect, it seems like everything goes better. And I've got to imagine in your particular field that really adds to a smooth, onboarding and a smoother transition to get people planed up and productive. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, and we have a ton of tech that we build throughout the pandemic around more efficient hiring and onboarding, and just really making it possible for self-serve. I think the HR tech industry has tried for a long time to make it easier for people to be hired. I think it's really comes from sort of an initial insight we had early in the pandemic, which was like, we actually have to get workers wanting to use the software. We have to get them very engaged with the platform. And if you build the kind of software that people really like, then the rest becomes very easy. And so, we've been able to cut through a lot of the normal challenges that HR tech has, in the sense of like, people are anyway very engaged with our platform. And then for them, onboarding, doing additional training, taking care of an extra piece of paperwork or whatever is just a couple of clicks. So we've really been able to cut that hiring and onboarding process down to almost nothing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know HR tech is a buzzword, and sometimes people can think there are challenges with automation sometimes where you kind of program the human element out of things, and maybe it's a turnoff, or maybe it seems like, okay, this is way too structured and stringent. I'm dealing with systems and software and not people. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, to begin with, I think it's time for HR tech to kind of come out of the doghouse. A lot of people view it as sort of compliance software.
Yeah.
It kind of gets forced on us, and particularly the workforce out in the field, and it's like, oh God, I have another compliance task I have to do. And that's really, we've sort of all of that we basically want automated away. All of that kind of, really not particularly valuable process work and paperwork. So that's a big part of what our platform does in the background. Where humans get involved, your HR folks and your line managers is more on the people side and the important people interactions. Some of that's human judgment. It's definitely communication. It's helping guide, coach, inspire the people that you're working with. That's really, and we've got specific places where those interactions happen. They happen, at the end of the hiring and onboarding process. We don't, get people involved in the more kind of like automated paperwork part. We get them involved in, final orientation and getting people up and running their first week and two on the job. We get our line supervisors very involved in just kind of day-to-day management because, in our app, you kind of got real-time view of where your crews are on the map and, in sort of like roster level views that are all real-time in the mobile app. So, supervisors, line supervisors can be there communicating with their folks who are on the job site, who are between job sites, who are maybe commuting from home. They can be following and managing and organizing things, really providing that day-to-day leadership in real time on our platform. And that's really where we want our humans. We don't want them doing boring paperwork in the back office.
Yeah, and so that's on one side. So the human element's really important. Then on the opposite, on the AI and automation side, obviously, I mean, whenever we think of automation, it's so we can increase productivity, so something more scalable. What are some of the areas where that automation really increases productivity, where it's low-hanging fruit and a no-brainer for a company to say, I've got to plug into this goodness because we're really missing the boat on our productivity?
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely. I think one of the biggest, most important AIs in work is sort of some of the work that we're doing on foundational models in scheduling. I think just broadly speaking, if you look at a company that has 5,000, 10,000, 100,000 workers out in the field at job sites, those kinds of companies, and there's just so much efficiency. You talk about 1 percentage point improvement in utilization or in productivity, and it's just a huge lever in the business. So I think that's the number one. Really, I'd almost go so far as to say in all of kind of HR and operations software, I think that particular AI is about the biggest one that we're working on and that the industry needs.
Nice. So when we hear, and again, these buzzwords, people hear AI and they
Yeah.
they have something in their mind, and that could vary depending on what the conversation is around. But what are some forms of AI that companies are really using today that maybe they don't even realize are AI?
Yeah, totally. So, all around sort of workforce management and hiring and onboarding, a bunch of the more common applications of AI, are right there. It's sort of one big one is job matching, and that's the skill of the worker that you may already have in your company, or the candidate that you're looking at, and where they match kind of open slots. So a good way to sort of think about the technology to sort of lay it out on a high level is we have essentially slots of work that need to be done, and then we have units of work, in other words, our workers and the hours that they have to provide to the system. And there's a big application of AI is deciding which people best fit which slots. It's a problem the industry, we've adapted from ride sharing and from the gig economy and places that we worked previously. And really the sort of the history of it goes all the way back to some of the first yield management algorithms that the airline industry did. They were really sort of the early pioneers in there, particularly American Airlines, and sort of yield managing which butt got in what seat. And it's not too dissimilar from deciding which worker is on what job doing what tasks today.
Great analogy. Yeah, I have something popping in my mind. I'm thinking of a person we interviewed for a position a couple of years ago, and I remembered asking them, how did you learn about this job? Were you searching on Indeed, or was it a LinkedIn job board, or where did you find us? And they said, oh, well, you guys emailed me and said, hey, there's this position open and we think you're a really good fit. Are you interested in applying? And I'm thinking, okay, I didn't say we didn't. I thought, well, that's interesting. So as I looked into it further and called our rep, and I think it was Indeed, they said, oh yeah, we have some automation that proactively reaches out to profiles that are a fit within, the top 80% or something of your requirements with their resume. And I thought, wow, that is actually pretty amazing. And in that particular case, we actually found a new employee to hire that we may not have otherwise found.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that technology has just gotten a lot better really quickly, because now, companies like Indeed and the job boards that are out there, they'll have the matching of the types of candidates, and they'll have a little bit of success data. What you have, if you're, running your own construction company, if you've got a big base of employees, you've got all of that history of how well people performed and who your best employees are. And then what we're able to do is connect it and this is really sort of the hiring AI application. We connect, a company like ours will connect that all the way through with your performance data. And then we can look in the market for who are candidates, potential candidates, employees at other companies that match the profile of your very best performers. And then we can specifically target them and move them through your hiring process. So it's really really a brave new world. What seemed like mission impossible a couple of years ago, now you can really sort of hand select. It seems like hand selecting, except it's at massive scale, and you can be out there recruiting exactly the types of employees that you need.
Yeah, and from the sounds of it, Tom Cruise can help you do that if you're talking about mission impossible.
Right.
Love it. Good word. So when we talk about some of these things, I think most people are familiar with at least the concepts. What do you see coming down the pike that maybe hasn't really reared its head up yet, or isn't on people's radar, that you are pretty excited about, or you think is going to really be a game changer in the future?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think there's, it's going to be a while before in-person work gets disrupted.
Okay.
I think we're companies like ours who are providing different tools around frontline work and different applications of AI around frontline work. We're gonna help the frontline worker be much more effective out in the field. And some of the stuff we were talking about, like if I know that a worker can be twice as productive on one job site versus a different job site, and the system helps me decide that, that's a huge increase in productivity. I think those kinds of changes, they're happening now. They're happening in 5 or 10% of companies now. It's going to take 5 years for them to get all the way through to 70 or 80% of companies, but that's coming down the pike. I'm super, super excited about that. I think for a lot of white collar workers and workers, who are remote or sitting behind desks, I think this is just like the future is already here. We're using these generative AIs to do all kinds of things, whether it's write copy or even, lay out a new project plan for something we're about to kick off. They've just become like this super lever that we've got in our back pocket. As I sort of look across the tech industry and a lot of things, the way people are working and peers of mine who are running companies, we're all sort of, I think, at about 80 or 90% adoption of things like OpenAI within our white collar workforces. So that has like already happened. And I think it's just early days in terms of the implications. It's going to be just so much more productive working in white collar, I think, for the next 5 years or so. So I think you put those two things together and we end up in a place where, as far as that all turns into a much more productive workforce on all levels, that should increase living standards. And I'm excited about a potential increase in living standards kind of across the boards. It's going to be really interesting to see what these next few years bring. I mean, imagine a U.S. that's 20% more productive and 20% wealthier and higher living standards in a very short amount of time. I think that's what's on the horizon for us.
Yeah, and I think there's other things where, safety increases, health increases. We have more money to invest in healthcare and infrastructure and other things that I think you're right. I think just, that rising tide, raises all the boats in the harbor when you're talking about this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what about, and we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but I want to sort of gap this. So AI starts in the beginning of the process to select and line up the right people and then maybe take them through a process to get all their information ready. At what point does the human take over? And then after that is an appropriate time where the AI kicks back in before you actually, have utilized it to that point where now you're just hands-on?
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about sort of the time to deployment and yeah. No, I think the systems, it really kind of depends on how quickly the system comes up to speed. And it's really kind of a data question ultimately. And what we see is the larger the company generally, you normally think about large company and tech deployments, like the larger, the slower. But really the time to value and sort of the time for the system to get up and running is quicker the more data you have, and particularly in the kinds of applications that we're working on, which are all kind of relying on internal data. So we in our particular world, a company like Movo, we can be up and running in about 2 weeks. Okay. And shorter times, providing more lift and more value, the bigger the company is. So really we talk about, our sweet spot being sort of 5,000 employees or above.
Okay. So you're typically working with much larger organizations.
We are. Yep. Yeah. Smaller organizations, there's still value. It's just, there's less data and there are less levers to pull. If you're a 100 guy shop, then, and you can get a 10 or 20% improvement, it's a smaller lever than obviously when you put it over 100,000 and you're talking about literally moving thousands of people around.
Yeah, that's amazing. Is there one industry or another where you seem to be predominantly working more than others?
I think not particularly, because it's really, it comes down to sort of, I think there are some industries where there's slightly more benefit, but the sort of main benefit of being much more productive cuts across all kinds of frontline industries. And the kinds of things that we're talking about, and we work in everything from construction to kind of field engineering, where we've been working a lot in the clean tech transformation or the energy transformation. Right. Those projects tend to be very distributed as well. Healthcare, we're working on the nursing problem, I would call it, in our country, and travel nursing, and there's a lot of dynamics there as well. They of course have medical licensing and some additional onboarding criteria. But the system handles those really well, and they're great partners, data partners, in terms of making sure that the credentials are covered off there. Manufacturing, logistics, classic frontline industries, hospitality, you kind of name it. Anywhere
you're touching it all.
A company with a lot of people out in the field, there's a ton of value from a system like ours.
Love that. So is there a place where you feel like the AI really helps attract that talent, where it's like you could really give credit for, hey, we're using this AI system, and because of that, we we're getting better people or more people?
Yeah, totally. What I would say, we learned this, and obviously it's a slightly different market than it was during the pandemic, but we were laser focused on talent acquisition in the pandemic, as really the whole economy was, right? And one of the things that we realized very shortly into it was all about sort of minimizing time to hire and minimizing frictions. And, that's what I mentioned earlier. So we made sure that the app was really user friendly and the kind of app that, everyone from a nurse to a factory worker was going to want to use. And then that enabled us to put some self-service in place. And then we really just worked on automating away any of the frictions and any of the data requirements. So we got the hiring experience to be like, let's put a couple of, like you basically have to go into a mobile app, download a mobile app, and then fill out a couple of quick forms of information, and really just like a scrolling page or two. Takes the average user 2 to 3 minutes to fill all of that out. And then they're essentially hired if there's nothing in the way of them being hired, e.g. like background check doesn't pass or nursing credentials get flagged or something like that. Assuming all the paperwork's fine in the background, they're essentially ready to go at 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. They're done, they're hired, they're ready to start. So for us, that was the big insight, was like, we saw that for every day or two in the hiring process, we lost like 50% of the candidates. And it wasn't the bad candidates that we lost, it was the best candidates. So we really just, re-engineered everything to be like, let's make this hiring process, absolutely as seamless as it can be.
Yeah, that's brilliant. When they're in high demand and there's a lot of opportunity, if they're stuck in the middle of some process and somebody else comes back to them with something very simple and quick, and they're like, wow, that was easy. And next thing you know, there's an opportunity. It's like, I'm going here, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you never know, right? You might be the third employer or fourth employer in their job search that they're talking to. So, you can't assume like, oh, our process is at industry standard, that's good enough. You kind of, if you want to win disproportionately, you got to be a lot faster than all your peers.
That's brilliant. That's awesome. Well, I very much enjoyed this conversation. I think there's a lot of opportunity for companies to improve in this process, and we certainly encourage them to check out Movo and learn more about how you might be able to help them through their processes and fill some of these gaps for them. Is there anything else that you wanted to point out before we wrap up the conversation today?
No, I really enjoyed the conversation. I think we covered a lot of ground, and do encourage everyone to check us out at movo.co, movo.co. Look forward to hearing from you.
That's awesome. So we played a little word game here at the beginning. You and I, before we jumped on, I picked a word and I assigned you the word mission impossible, and you did a great job using that. And then what was the word you gave me, and how'd I do?
I gave you HR tech, and you did great. I used it like 10 times.
Yeah, that was a softball. That was an easy one for this conversation, right?
Right.
That's awesome. Well, if there was one final thing you wanted the listeners to take away, what would that be today, Jason?
I think it's, to embrace the technology, and the way things are, we're in the early stages of this real transformation of work and society. And there's a little bit of programming skills required if you want to use the really cutting edge stuff. But the projects are moving so quickly that, the bar is really low in terms of using some really powerful AIs already. And there are all kinds of ways that you can incorporate them into your work life and into your home life. So that would be my, sort of general thought for the audience is go out there, check out the large language models, things like ChatGPT, especially ChatGPT 4, if you can get your hands on it. Just does an amazing job and can help you really in all kinds of things. A really practical application that we have in our family is, a lot of us are sort of the tech support for the family, and answer whatever family chat groups questions from time to time, and you really don't even have to anymore. You can literally train elderly folks in your family who are asking you these kinds of questions, or whoever. You can train just about anybody to issue some prompts in one of these AIs, and it gives you a wonderful answer, a very straightforward and practical answer. Can solve all kinds of day-to-day questions, whether it's that, or whether it's finding a recipe, or whether it's making travel plans. It's just kind of amazing the impact that these tools can already have on your life.
Well, it's the new Google, but with a brain, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Love it. Awesome. Well, this was lots of fun. I very much enjoyed the conversation, and I encourage the listeners again to check out your website and learn more about Movo and the great work they're doing. So thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on. I had a ton of fun.
Take care. See ya.
Thank you for joining us today on the Mobile Workforce Podcast, sponsored by About Time Technologies and WorkMax. If you liked the conversation we had today, or were able to learn anything new or helpful, please make sure to follow us on our WorkMax page on LinkedIn and on Instagram at WorkMax_. And subscribe to the show on iTunes or your preferred podcast platform so you will never miss another insightful episode. Also, if you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review and share the show with your friends and colleagues. Your support means the world to us and will allow us to continue providing impactful information with others looking to improve their results in their business and, in turn, their life.